They'll tidy it up before March 17th. That's when they have to get. That's when they have to be cap compliant. So we all.
All right, we're going to bring John McMullen into the conversation now, just like we do every night at 7:30, our NFL Eagles Insider. We have Eitan Shander coming up after John at 8 p.m., so buckle up. We have a nice little hour ahead. So, John, how are we doing tonight, man?
Doing well. You got Eitan. What a lineup.
Yeah, luckily for you, you can lead off and not worry about following that potential train wreck. It's going to be gold, but it's going to be a train wreck.
Well, I wasn't going to go that route, but okay.
I mean, in a good way. You never know what you're going to talk about with Shander. That's what makes him great.
Yeah, you never know where it's going. Although old school rap is a pretty good indication of where you're going.
Yeah, I had to do extensive old school rap research earlier today to get ready for that segment. But I also had to do some research on Jason Kelce. So let's start there. He's back, John.
Good news for the Eagles. We talked about the offensive line, and I think if you have any hope for the 2021 season and this transition that we talked about a lot with a new quarterback, new coaching staff, young quarterback, whether it's going to be Jalen Hurts or a rookie, if you want to hang your hat on something and say this team can be competitive in a bad division, it's that offensive line, but only if guys get healthy and Jason comes back, and now we know Jason Kelce's going to be back with the Philadelphia Eagles, so that's big.
Yeah, it is. And I heard Barrett Brooks earlier say that this, the fact that the Eagles are bringing Kelce back and Kelce's deciding to come back, however you want to phrase it or whatever the reality is, it's more of like a facade to say, like, hey, we're not throwing in the towel. We're not losing on purpose. We're going for it. We just brought back our veteran center, Jason Kelce. What's your thoughts on that?
I don't know if it's a facade. I think we get caught into this. Certain people get caught into this rebuild, and I talk about it all the time. I mean, you can't have a young player at every position. You need some veterans. In the history of the NFL, there's never been a completely young rebuilding team. I mean, you need veterans to sort of show the way, if anything, for the bare minimum, show the young guys how to be professional. So you always have a balance. You always need a balance. And basically the difference between a rebuilding team and a team that thinks the championship window was open, which is what the Eagles were previously, probably for a little bit too long, you kind of default to the veteran player because you think maybe this guy will be the one to get me over the hump, whereas if you're rebuilding, you're going to default to the young player, to the rookie player, to the ascending player. But that's not with an all-pro player, a Pro Bowl player, third straight all-pro recognition, borderline Hall of Fame player. He can still play. You keep that guy, and the Eagles are doing it.
Yeah, and we just talked about the offensive line earlier this week. So what does that mean for the rest of the offensive line and maybe the rest of the loose ends, so to speak, that the Eagles have to tidy up this offseason and hopefully sooner than later before the draft?
Yeah, I mean, they'll tidy it up before March 17th. That's when they have to get. That's when they have to be cap compliant. So we already know about Jason. We already know about Lane Johnson's going to rework his deal. So really, the only question left is Brandon Brooks, and are the Eagles going to bring him back and rework his deal? I would assume there was some talk that maybe they would try to spin him off. But I don't know how much trade value he would have. As good a player as he is, he's got the huge contract. He's got the 2 Achilles tears in 3 years, really less than 3 years. So I don't think you can get value in return, certainly for what type of player he is. So I think the best way to go about it is to rework his deal as well. Ultimately, I think they'll get that done. And then you sort of, maybe there's a little bit of a lesser question with Andre Dillard, but either way, the core of the group, which is Kelce, Lane Johnson, Brandon Brooks, Isaac Seumalo, is going to be there. And that's going to be the strength of this team. And by a wide margin, I would say it's going to be the strength of this team.
Does the Jason Kelce announcement of him coming back another season, does that change anything or confirm anything for potential plans, whether that's through the draft or free agency, for building this roster still?
No, not necessarily. I mean, you would, obviously, if you lose him, if he retires or if he tries to force his way out of here, you have to figure out what you're going to do at the center position. But ultimately, I thought that would have came in-house anyway, whether it was Isaac or Nate Herbig or Luke Kariga or somebody like that. We talked about that as well. They had plenty of young bodies they could have went to. So I didn't think, and Jason talked about it. He talked to the Eagles website after he reworked the deal. And I wrote about it on Sports Illustrated, and everybody can see it. He talked about the offensive line and how deep they are. And they're deep because they were forced to play these young players because of all the injuries last year, and the Herbigs, the Jordan Mailatas, the Jack Driscolls of the world. They got a lot of playing time, and they showed some upside. So I don't know how much they were going to go heavy on the offensive line, even though that's sort of one of their default settings. It's still by far the best position they have and the deepest position they have. I don't think they necessarily have to look at it. So I don't think it's, if anything, as far as plans and as far as the draft, it will make them look a little bit less at offensive line.
Talk about the deal real quick, John. I mean, there's not too much there, but $9 million fully guaranteed with a potential earning up to $12 million. That's fair, right? We're not going to overanalyze Jason Kelce's contract and worth here, right?
No, the key Jason's getting a raise and the Eagles are getting cap relief. So that's sort of what you do, and that's sort of the bookkeeping part of this, and where both sides are happy. And a couple dummy years. So Howie Roseman is clearly looking at the landscape and clearly saying, okay, the NFL is set to sign these massive, explosive TV deals that are going to generate more revenue than ever before. And this COVID hiccup's going to get by, they're going to get past it, and that new TV revenue is going to kick in a few years. And he thinks by kicking the can down the road, it'll be a little bit easier. And I know a lot of people are upset, and they say that's why the Eagles are in this position to begin with. But I don't think that's an understanding. That the Eagles are in this position to begin with because, as I mentioned, they thought the championship window was open. They were trying to win another Super Bowl. That's what you do. You spend, and it's cyclical. And when you sort of power down and go into these different levels of transition, rebuilding, whatever adjective you want to use, then you start to have cap space. So if you look at all the teams that are difficult in difficult cap situations, they're either really good or they were really good, and they've started to descent because the players are aging. That would be the category the Eagles are in. And generally, if you have a lot of money, you are either really bad or you're in that early ascent before you have to pay your star players. That's kind of how it works.
Just some other updates here, just because it has to do with the NFC East and maybe the Eagles. I don't think so, but Alex Smith officially moving on and vice versa with the Washington football team. Anything there, John, and your thoughts?
Well, I think it's pretty amazing that Alex Smith got back on the football field, number one. That's one of the just best stories. I think a lot of people, and Washington is in this category. I mean, they're surprised. I think everybody's surprised. I know I'm surprised that he even tried to come back. And I don't know how you can trust that injury. And 17 surgeries and him being healthy. So ultimately, I'm glad he got back on the field. I'm glad he proved it to himself. I'm glad he accomplished that goal. But if you're a team looking for even a backup quarterback, I'm not sure that's the avenue you want to go down because, I mean, that was so devastating what happened to him. It's just, I don't know how, from a health standpoint, you could feel comfortable with that. It's sad, but that's the reality.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard some rumors of, Alex Smith as backup to the Eagles. I mean, I don't know. Listen, I get
he's a big name. People know that.
Yeah.
You know how that works.
Yeah.
And then he was once the backup to. Brian Johnson, the Eagles quarterbacks coach, was once the backup to Alex Smith at Utah. So, people say, he knows them, and they know the name, and that the Eagles are not going to bring Alex Smith to be the backup quarterback. I feel comfortable in saying that.
Well, who is Washington going to replace Alex Smith with? Like, what's their plans at quarterback? Because obviously that could impact the Eagles throughout the year.
Well, they're one of those teams that needs a quarterback. I mean, they re-signed Taylor Heineke, who did a great job, as we know, coming in so late, basically off the street, was back in college, trying to get his engineering degree, played tremendously in the playoffs, really. Just a gutty performance. So he's back, but obviously they don't want to say he's the starting quarterback. They don't want to give him the job. They want some competition, and they're one of those teams we've talked about that needs a quarterback and wants a quarterback, and we'll see how deep they want to dive into this pool because there's a lot of veteran guys. Most notable would probably be Ryan Fitzpatrick, but you also have the Jameis Winstons of the world, players like that. And then we've talked about all the rookies. I think Todd McShay was out with his mock draft. He had 5 quarterbacks going in the top 10. So these guys, Mac Jones being number 5, and I've mentioned on this show on Extending the Play with you, he's going to go a lot faster than people realize. And Washington is one of those teams that's looking for a quarterback.
Yeah, we're all waiting for that first shoe to drop for the quarterback carousel, and the Washington and Alex Smith news was worthy of bringing up here early in the conversation. John, just going back to Kelce, one more thought with this news. Jason Kelce returns officially here for another season for the Philadelphia Eagles. You talk about the past couple months that this franchise has had, losing Doug Peterson, losing Carson Wentz, an entire new coaching staff essentially. This is not just good for the Eagles on the field. You and I have talked a lot about the youth of this coaching staff. This is essentially another coach you're getting in this locker room that players are going to listen to and trust, right?
Yeah, no question. I mean, he's a leader in that locker room. He has been for years. He's a leader in the organization. Yeah, he's a leader in that offensive line room. He's a leader on the field, especially with a young quarterback. I mean, Jason Kelce might be the best center of this generation. Never mind the best center in the NFL right now is a 3-time As I said, back-to-back All-Pro. And one of the things he does better than anybody else is call-out protection. So a lot of times when you have a young center who hasn't done it, who hasn't been through the grind, and this will be Jason's 11th season, he's seen it all, he's done it all. You can't rely on that center to call out protections and get guys sliding in the right way and understand the fronts they're seeing, where the pass rush is coming from. And it has to be on the quarterback's shoulders. And sometimes that's not a problem if you have a veteran quarterback. If you have Tom Brady, if you have Peyton Manning in his prime, it's certainly not a problem. If you have Jalen Hurts, who's started 4 NFL games, or a rookie quarterback, it's, you don't want him worrying about that on his plate as well. So that's huge for the Eagles and a young quarterback to have a center that can handle basically every single protection call you have. I mean, you can't even emphasize how big that is.
What's up with Slay? Because I'm hearing he was also restructured, or they're in the process of that. Can you fill me in with the details?
Yeah, his deal was restructured already, so he was scheduled to count about over $15 million against the cap, and same thing. You push it off to further years. You have the voidable years at the end. They got it down to over $6 million, so they generated about $9 million in cap space by reworking Slay's deal. And that's an indication he'll be back, because there was some talk that they might try to trade him as well because of where he is in his career, and a veteran player who maybe would prefer to be in a situation where he had a better chance at a Super Bowl championship. But he'll be back, and that's big as well, because the Eagles have some issues in the secondary. He's really the only proven cornerback they have, and they were able to create that space, and that's the route they have to go. We all knew it, and it's Kelce, it's Slay, it's Lane Johnson, Brandon Graham, Javon Hargrave might be next, Brandon Brooks might be next. That's what the Eagles had to do. They started this process about $43 million over projected. And the cap hasn't been set officially, but most people think it's going to be about 185. It can't go any lower than 180. Eagles were, after the Slay deal, got to cut about $33 million more, and they already started. I don't have the numbers on Lane Johnson. He's not included in that. And as I said, they'll continue to go this route, and that's what they have to do. And that's part of the issue when you're in these types of cycles, as I explained the cycles. I mean, they were a team that won a Super Bowl and thought the championship window was open. So now they're in a different cycle, and you gotta make do with the salary cap until you turn the roster over.
Talking with John McMullen, our NFL Eagles insider, at JF McMullen on Twitter, phillyvoice.com, si.com for his written work, extending the play every Saturday, 10 a.m. to 11. John, we've been detailing specific areas on the field on both sides of the ball with the team, and we're going to have to go secondary here, part one maybe, for the next 5-10 minutes, and then we can get to some more of it to start next week's shows. But let's look at the secondary. And Jalen Mills, let's start there. Pending unrestricted free agent. What do you think they're going to do with Jalen?
Well, I think a lot depends on, two things. I mean, remember, he was very well liked by the previous coaching staff, and Jim Schwartz had a great affinity for Jalen Mills, and now Jim's not here. So you have to see, number one, what do Jonathan Gannon, who is the new defensive coordinator, and by the way, his background is with defensive backs. That's sort of how he came up as a position coach. in Denard Wilson, who's going to be the new secondary coach. They don't have that history. So they might look at the film and say, we want to go in a different direction. So number one has to be their evaluation. And with Jalen Mills, it can go so many different ways because he's so versatile. The vast majority of his time was spent at corner. When he came to the Eagles as a seventh-round pick, moved to safety. Remember, he played safety in college at LSU at the end of his career. It was very similar to his time here. He started as a corner, moved to a safety. So they have to decide, is he a corner or is he a safety? And do we want him? And if they want him, then they have to figure out the money aspect of it because he's a free agent. And a lot of it is going to depend on how much interest he sees elsewhere. If someone likes his, for instance, his ceiling as a safety and says, wow, this guy did some nice things, and I think he did last season, and they want to pay him, a multi-year, say 3 years, $7-8 million a year, well, the Eagles probably can't get into that business. They just can't afford it because of their salary cap issues. So many moving parts with Jalen Mills. But if they can get him on another 1-year deal, as they did last year for, a mid-range contract, $4, maybe $5 million, I don't see why you wouldn't want him back for the bare minimum. He can do so many things. He can play so many different positions for you. It's just a good Swiss Army knife to have. And the Eagles are probably at the mercy, as I said, of the market. Now, what helps them from that standpoint, Ryan, is everybody's under the same restrictions as far as COVID-19, as far as the scale back. So the thought around the league is there aren't going to be a lot of multi-year contracts for big money. So that probably helps the Eagles.
What is going to change with the strategy and scheme in the secondary now? No more Schwartz, insert Gannon. I asked you this about the D-line, and I'll continue to ask if anything's going to be different.
Well, if Indianapolis is an indication, probably a lot more cover 2 on the back end and cover 3. A lot more zone coverage. And that means you're going to need a couple of safeties who are good in coverage. Rodney McLeod is typically he's that type of player. He's a center fielder, so to speak. But he's coming off a torn ACL on, I think it was December 13th. So you have some injury issues, if you think about the rehab of a torn ACL, it's going to be, it's going to be close to be 100% by week 1. Let's just put it that way. So they may need multiple bodies at safety because if they lose Jalen Mills, if Rodney's not ready, they're going to have to go in a different direction there. And then corner opposite Slay is the one guy. And I would imagine Avonte Maddox is going to move back to the slot corner position, and they'll need to get another outside corner. That's what I think is going to happen. But as far as scheme-wise, you're going to see more zone coverage. And we'll see. If he reverts back to what he was in Minnesota, it'll be more multiple. But if you look at Minnesota and when Gannon was with Mike Zimmer, a lot more veteran players, and that's why they could do a lot of different things. And I'm not sure year 1 the Eagles will be able to do those types of things.
It doesn't seem like there's going to be a massive hole or a void that is going to need to be filled as far as the secondary is concerned. John, is that accurate?
No, not necessarily. You are going to need another corner, as I said, another outside corner. And if you want to look at Mike Jaquette, I mean, I can't count on him. as an undrafted free agent last year. He had the one really bad game. He showed some signs. And from a physical perspective, he's got the length and the size and the speed and the athleticism you want. But remember, in college, he was a wide receiver, so he's very raw, just switched to the position. So they need more of a veteran presence. I don't know if Avonte Maddox can play. I mean, he just was not good as an outside corner. And to be honest, I mean, there's this narrative that he played well as a rookie. He really didn't. I mean, I give him credit for moving to free safety in a very difficult circumstance and not embarrassing himself, but he didn't play well. So people are acting like you can move him to nickel corner or free safety and you'll be fine. I don't agree with that mindset at all. So ultimately, I think they're going to add multiple bodies in the secondary, and I can almost guarantee. Remember, they have 4 picks in essentially the top 100, and at number 6, outside shot, they could take one of the corners, but probably not. But I guarantee you they're going to add a corner in those top 100 picks. So either in day 2, they're going to add somebody in the secondary.
Will they add someone in the secondary with the top 100 and look at free agency? There's a couple names that I'm seeing in free agency. I don't know if you want to rattle any off, but do you think they will and could do both?
The reason I hedge on free agency is the Eagles are not going to be players in free agency. We just talked about they're $33 million over the cap, and they've already reworked all these contracts. They've already cut Deshaun Jackson. They've already scheduled to cut Malik Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey. They're going to either trade or cut Zach Ertz, and they still have to rework more deals. It's going to be Brandon, as I said, Brandon Graham, likely Brandon Brooks, potentially Javon Hargrave, and more. This is all just to get under the cap. And remember, just to be cap compliant by March 17th. Remember, then on top of it, you need money to sign your draft class. And then on top of that, you have to create more money if you want to get involved in free agency. Now, I'm not saying the Eagles aren't going to sign any free agents. They are, but it's going to be one-year deals. It's going to be one-year prove-it deals. And look, if you can find Patrick Robinson during the Super Bowl season as a guy who, for whatever reason, hasn't played up to his potential and all of a sudden has a career year, that's great. But the Eagles are not going to be in the conversation for high-level free agents. They just can't from a money standpoint. They're just in a different phase. So it's got to be the draft, and that's why they're going to look to the draft. And they need to get younger. They need to get more cost-effective on the roster, and that's what you do. And then if you hit on a corner, say, in the second round, well, then you got a cost-effective corner for 4 seasons, and you're cooking with gas, so to speak.
It's going to be a little bit interesting. We'll have to get more into it tomorrow, John. So let's talk about extending the play before we have to get to the top of the hour here. Extended edition, right? 9 to 11?
Super-sized edition of extending the play. Yeah, we're extending the play. 2 hours. So everyone on AM 1490 gotta tune in a little bit early. And Ryan, it's gonna be us together in studio, so people are always thrilled about that. And we're gonna give them some bonus and talk some Sixers as well, and talk some baseball. I know I talked on the middle, and you got into it on Twitter. I want to get into that with you and explain why baseball, basketball, and football are not as entertaining as they used to be. We're going to have a little clash with that.
Oh, that is great. Get your popcorn ready. I'm ready because I know we disagree. So that's going to be a good conversation. And we've had those conversations in the past. They've always been fun and entertaining. So extending the play with host John McMullen and myself in studio tomorrow morning right here on 1490 Sports Betting Radio, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., that extra hour. So set your alarms and tune in. And we'll do it in the morning, John. I'll see you in a few hours, my friend.
All right, buddy. Thanks for having me as usual.
Absolutely, man. Talk to you soon. There he is, Johnny Mack. Good stuff from him. All right, let's get to that top of the hour break. When we come back, Eitan Shander joins the conversation. Not going to want to miss that one either.
The middle. That's what I told you, man. I got a hangover, man. So
what is this hangover?
Yeah, what's with this hangover?
Right,
what happened yesterday?
Cheap vodka, bro. Cheap vodka, man.
What?
Well, I took pineapple vodka with the pineapples, and I infused it for like a week or two.
Too much pineapple.
Pineapple is terrible.
It was so sweet that you would just keep on drinking, and I just kept on drinking it.
Did you say you took pineapple vodka and then infused it into pineapples?
Yes.
I mean, there's sorority girls right now at Penn State that are laughing at you, Barrett. He took pineapple vodka and infused it into pineapples.
I thought it would be a better taste, and it was a better taste. It was a great taste. It just went down too fast. Went down way too fast, man. And next thing you know, man, 3 Shades to the Wind, watching Queen Latifah.
Oh, my God. That's the line of the day.
The Middle with Eitan Shander, Barrett Brooks, and Harry Mays. Weekdays from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern.